Olá, bem-vindos à Entrevista Portuguesa. Estou aqui com o ator Joseph Reitman. Hi, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you for asking. I'm going to
Good.
start with a simple question. What made you want to become an actor?
Oh my, it's a very long story, but I'll try to make it quick. Um, when I was little, I wanted to become a superhero. And I soon learned that as I outgrew my Spider-Man underwear, that was never going to happen. And I kind of got into sports and played college American football and did those things. Baseball and being an athlete was along the same lines. I was fascinated with TV and movies. Even as a young child, I would dream of being on television. And I got to an age where I realized that they had acting classes in high school, and I took one, being like, I think I might be okay at this. And I found that it made a lot of sense for me, and it just kind of from there I just kept doing it. And then when in my junior year in high school, I auditioned for a theater company without ever having auditioned for anything in my life that was going to London. Uh, and I got into the company, and I flew to London and did the show when I was 16 years old. And by the time I came back, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And that was it.
That's amazing. It's really a great thing to be able to follow a dream. Um, and
Yeah.
and
Yes, I agree. I agree. Go on.
no, no,
Yeah, but no, I
uh,
mean, I think not enough people chase their dreams, and I feel like that's something that um, it's a we only can stop ourselves from doing whatever we want to do. So, we make those choices, and it doesn't matter where you are in your life. If you're 15 years old or 60 years old, if there's something you want to do, uh, no one should ever stop themselves from chasing their dreams. So yeah, I'm very lucky to have made choices and been able to do things I want to do.
I also saw you did some poker tournaments. How did your interest in poker start?
Uh, Poker is a really interesting story. My ex-wife, she got invited to do a television show that was like a celebrity poker charity thing that they did on television in the States called Celebrity Poker Showdown. And they sent us a bunch of material to prepare ourselves for her to prepare her for the show. And I read it all. And I was like, we need to get you ready. So I studied all the poker stuff. And she went on the show, and we learned a lot about poker. And then our relationship ended. And by a weird order of events, I was introduced to a woman named Annie Duke, who was a professional poker player, a super successful poker player. At the time, she was the most winning female poker player in the world, and but a brilliant player, male or female, does not matter. And but she and I started talking, and we were on a date, and she pitched an idea for a TV show she had about poker, and I pitched her an idea that I had for a poker TV show, and we both agreed that my idea was better. And so we took the show and we brought it to a network. They bought it, and part of the show was teaching people how to play poker. So I had to study even more so because she was so good, so amazing, and I had to study really, really hard to learn. And by the time the show aired, she was like, "You should play a tournament. You really know what you're talking about." And I'm like, "I'm an idiot. There's no way." And she's like, "No, no, play." So she bought me into a tournament online, and there were 2,776 players in the tournament, and she had to commentate it. So she was the announcer for the show. So she went to the studio after it started because she was just going to do like commentation halfway through the tournament. And when she got there, she said, "How's Joe doing?" And they went, "He's chip leader." And so I ended up uh, winning the tournament out of 2,776 people and won a large sum of money. And part of that was a seat at the World Series of Poker to play in the main event. That was part of my winnings. So so she was like, well, now you need to play more poker because you're going to play in the biggest tournament in the world. And I was like, oh no. And so I had to play a bunch of other events. I cashed in some of those, and I played for a few years, and in the process, like, met a lot of players who were very successful, and was lucky enough to be signed as a semi-pro by a couple of sites, and they backed me in some events. And I was very lucky to be able to play with a lot of great players and learn, and asked to teach at certain events, and and then that led, because of my acting, to play a lot of charity events and help other players learn how to play. I would go to charity events, and then I would donate my time and teach the people who donated to the charity, who donated money to sit at a table with me, and I would teach them, so raise more money for charity. And that's kind of like all the stuff that happened. I was very lucky. And then I produced a couple of poker things and directed some commercials that were for poker sites that aired on TV in the States. So it was very good to me. And it funded my first movie that I directed. So great.
And do you still play?
I play casually now. Like, I don't play really that for that much money. If my friends don't like to play with me because they think I play too seriously, and I don't want to play with the real pros because they would take my money. At this point, I'm out of practice. So I don't get invited a lot, but I do still play charity events when I'm invited, or if my friends break out the chips, we'll play a little bit for fun.
Going back to your acting career, what do you enjoy most about acting?
There's a few things. I'll list them. One of the great things is no day is ever the same. Most people go to a job and it's the same job every day.
Yeah.
But every job I get is a totally different human being. And so it's never the same, and most people go to a cubicle and push papers and work on the computer. And I go to work and they put a gun in my hand and tell me to try to kill somebody. And so it's kind of I get to play cops and robbers for a job. So that's great. And I also, TV and film for me is fascinating because there's like a weird documentation for what I do that lives forever now on the internet and in the world, where people like, what do you do? I'm like, open up Netflix and type in happy. It's like that's what I do. Then and there's really, honestly, there have been moments in my life where people have told me that they were very depressed and sad, and I was able to give them some escapism from their lives. Or you meet somebody who's seen something that you've done and their eyes light up because of a memory that they have about watching you and you moving them in some way. There's really no substitute for bringing joy to people for me, no matter where it is or why it is, being able to actually invoke positive energy from people by doing something so simple in my mind. I mean, I know it's complicated, but it's not rocket science. But be able to absolutely transfer my energy to somebody else and bring them joy is really it's a gift. And I don't mean that a gift for me. It's just I feel like it's a gift that I'm able to do it, but I feel like it's a gift, that keeps on giving, and people respond so well to it. It's hard. It's infectious, and it's a drug. You sit there and you're like, God, so many people enjoy it. It's hard to stop doing it. Like you're like, I mean, why would I stop? And teaching others to do it is also an amazing part of what I love to do. Teaching others to do the same thing so that they can spread the same joy is great.
Yeah, that part about joy is really true. I recently watched First Kill. I already knew who you were from the page of Comic Con Portugal, and I texted you about this without any hope that you would even see it. And when you answered, I was so happy to be able to meet you here now. It's one of the reasons I love doing this kind of interviews. I get to meet so many people that I admire, that I enjoy the work that I would have never met in any other circumstance. And
sure,
it's really amazing.
Well, that's great. And for me, it's part of the reason, if I have time, why would I say no? Like, if we're able to reach a few people and make people happy, that'd be very selfish for me to say no because I don't want to give time, or I don't want to make an effort. It's silly. So, I'm glad I made you happy. There you
And
go.
I'm glad you're here. And what has been your favorite role so far that you've played?
Happy for sure. Happy on side. Happy playing the very bad Santa was my favorite job I've ever had. And I can point out a few points of my career that are different, but Happy was like the longest period of time to play a character that I loved, that I really, really enjoyed the show. I thought the whole show was fun. So like, and crazy, and they let me get super weird, which I love being able to. They gave me free reign. They were like, go do whatever you want to do, and I was like, awesome. And I was offered the job, and it was so many good things that came along with that. But there are memories like Married with Children. The first Married with Children I ever did was my first. It was my favorite show on TV. And so whenever you get to climb into the television and be on something
Yeah.
that you watch, you're like, I'm now in the box. I'm now in the box. I'm now on the box. I'm in the thing. It's like, so that is always it is a bizarre. I was in love with Christina Applegate. I had her picture on my wall, and all of a sudden I'm playing her boyfriend, and you're like, this is stupid. Like, this is really, and my friends were screaming, and those things are amazing. I had a TV series on ABC in the States, and I did that sitcom with Molly Ringwald, Jenna Elfman, Lauren Graham, Ron Livingston, and Billy Burr, Conchetta Farrell, an amazing cast. That was my first series regular job, and for me, that was a dream. It was a sitcom. I got to just be funny every day, so that was amazing. Perfect Storm was an amazing moment too, because that was my first big movie. To work with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg, guys who and then play basketball with them during lunch. It's just fun.
And what is it like being on a set, on a movie set or TV show?
Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's awful. I mean, it's like regular life. You don't know what you're walking. Uh, most of the time, most of my life, I'm a guest on shows. So sometimes I'm a regular, but often I'm a guest star. Right? That's so you walk in, and sometimes you get treated very well, and sometimes you don't. And every show's different. Like every office would be different. It's kind of like being a temp. It's kind of you want as a temp in an office. You just kind of, I don't really know what I'm getting into today, or a substitute teacher. I don't know what's going to happen today. But sometimes the job is fulfilling and sometimes life changing, and you're like, this is amazing. And sometimes you leave and call your agent and say, I never want to go back again. It's like, no, I don't care if they even call. Don't. They can't pay me enough. I'm done. So it varies. But it's a lot of it's boring. Like a lot of it you spend in your trailer. And it depends. Like if I'm playing a character that's very close to me, then I walk around all day and I eat lunch with people and I'm kind of just like taking it in. If they let me, I go stand by the director's monitors and I watch them direct and I watch which takes they like. And, I try to soak in the different skill sets different people have on set. And then sometimes I play someone who's so weird or isolated. The days on First Kill when I worked, he was a bit of a jerk, right?
Really?
So he was, yeah, he was. Well, the character I played wasn't the nicest guy,
Yeah,
right?
true.
So I didn't. So when I was getting close to when we shot, I would go to my trailer and just spend time myself and start getting myself angry because I had a whole backstory about the death of his wife and all these things that happened where he was a miserable person looking to kill, like just looking for revenge. And I don't want to hang around with the cast when I'm doing that. And especially since I was there, I got hired for the show, for the whole show, as an acting coach. So I was there every day. I worked with the girls every day and worked with them as a coach and the members of the cast running lines. And when I did that, I had to be super nice. Right. And then the character was a bastard. So I had to like separate the two and be like, I need to be left alone for a while. I can't crack jokes. I need to be in my trailer and changing my opinion. So then it gets very quiet and then you're very isolated and it's somewhat boring, but that's the job. Sometimes you just have to be ready to go to work when they call you. And some days that's great. Some days it's awful.
And how do you prepare for a character?
Uh, depends on how different they are from me, right? Sometimes it's pretty easy. I memorize the lines, and I'll be like, "Oh, this guy sounds like me. This is easy." And I just have to run the lines over and over again until I forget, until I don't need them anymore. But for things like Happy, I went to New York. I spoke to the director. He wanted me to look like a rhino, so I put on like 30 pounds and just lifting weights and eating lots of protein and just got really jacked up as much as I could. And then I went and he was mentally disturbed, so I did a lot of studying of kind of like schizophrenia. He smoked meth, so I watched some stuff on that. He was angry at the world, and his father died, so I went and buried. I went out on the streets of New York and I dirtied myself up with my hair in my face, and I begged for money for an afternoon, just as a beggar on the streets for a day. Police pushed me around. Some people gave me money, and I did that for a day. So sometimes it's that complex. And then building a backstory for a character is very important, knowing where they came from, what their history is. The more detailed, the better. And then I break down the lines and the script. I do an arc of the character. I think about what I think his future might be. And then, and that's kind of like, and then I just start diving in, start working on the voice, start working on the movement. If it's different than mine, do I have a limp? Do I need an eye patch? Has he broken any bones before? Has he shot a gun before? Has he not shot a gun before? How good is he at what he does? Has he always been a tough guy, or has he just recently started to have to like save his family from poverty? It's like there's all these questions to ask yourself of why somebody is the way they are. And I go through a whole process of that. And it's there's a whole bunch of little things inside of that, but that kind of is an overview of what I do.
And you said you directed a couple of things. Do you prefer to act or direct?
Acting's so much easier. Directing, when you're acting, you're just a piece on the chessboard, and when you're directing, you're handling all the chess pieces. I tell people, when you act, you show up, you say the words, you go home, they call you back, you voice over some words, you go home, you show up to the premiere, they announce you, you wave, everyone cheers, you go home. It's a really easy job, honestly, once you get it. Getting the job's hard, but directing, you have to like know the material, often have to try to raise money for the material. Then you have to like help be part of like hiring the whole crew. If it's not for a TV series that's already going, if you're directing like a movie or commercial, you have to put a whole crew together. And then you have to like make sure everyone's on the same page, show people lookbooks, make sure everything's, do all of this prep work. Alfred Hitchcock once said, all great movies start at a desk because the work is before you get to set. And that people don't realize how much effort goes into building a world. And that's what a director really does. He takes a script, which is just kind of like a blueprint for a house. And then he has to build the whole house and decide what kind of doors you get and what kind of furniture goes in the house, what color the walls would be. And that's what directing is. It's like being a contractor and building everything and having it at the end of the day, have people, not feel like any of that work was done. Feel like that it's seamless and that it isn't distracting and just lives in that world. An excellent director goes almost unnoticed, so I think that's such a hard job. Not to say that I don't enjoy it, but it's exhausting and I wouldn't want to do it every day. I'm happy to do it once every couple of years, honestly. Acting I can do all the time.
I also saw you wrote and directed a short movie, Surviving the Island. What is your inspiration for it?
Well, I made that years ago. That was the first thing I ever directed, Surviving the Island. I made that a long time ago. And to be honest, a girl who was on the show Survivor, which, was a big show. She was in one of the first seasons. She wanted to become a mainstream actress. And she would ask me if I had any ideas of what we could shoot for her acting reel. And I pitched her this idea of what if somebody from the TV show Survivor, after they left the island, had a camera follow them and didn't stop filming them because the cameraman was still in love with her. And she still wanted to be on TV even after the TV show was over. The movie was the short film was a little ahead of its time because that's absolutely happened a million times since then.
Yeah.
But that was the idea, and it did pretty well. We made it for like almost no money, and it played a bunch of festivals in the U.S. and it helped me get other jobs, which was important. Raise money for my next short, so on and so forth. It was good.
And I'm going to ask about First Skill because I have a lot of friends in our school who love the show. And my question is, how was it like working on First Skill, and did you enjoy the experience?
First Skill was a complicated shoot. It was the showrunner was Felicia Henderson, who's a good friend of mine. She was an executive producer on The Punisher, another show that I did.
Yeah.
So I met her on The Punisher, and I invited her to my acting class to as a guest. I bring guests to my class, and every time I work on somebody, I invite them. She came and she saw me working with my actors, and she then came back to class and said, I'd like to work on something. And we worked on the first. She had the first scene she ever wrote on First Kill. She brought to my acting class, and I had all the actors work on it, and I gave them notes. And she really thought my notes were excellent, so she offered me the job of being the acting coach on the show. After I was hired as the acting coach, a job came up for a role, and she asked me my opinion on the role, and she had some actors in mind, and I said, I don't think any of them are the right choice. And she goes, could you play the guy? And I said, yes. I said I could. So I made a tape. I made a tape for her. I put myself on tape. I didn't, I showed that what I could do, and they hired me. And that's how I ended up getting the 4 jobs. That's how it came about. The job was difficult. It was hard. A bunch of things went wrong during the pilot, not due to production, but due to life and pandemic, and shooting during the pandemic, and some unfortunate happenstances that happened, and the pilot ended up going over budget, which caused a lot of tension for a while. But working with the cast and working with Felicia, it was great, and it also got me a chance to see Atlanta and learn things too. So even though there was some high pressure moments in the shoot, it was a very enjoyable shoot. I look back on it fondly. That's what I do.
I'm really sad it got canceled. It was an amazing show, and it was very popular when it came out.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about upcoming projects that you may have?
For me, I mean, I don't know how much you know about the writer's strike that's taking place right now. Do you know anything about the writer's strike? So that's a very big deal in the States. So that's happening as we speak. And then the actors' contract is up right now too. Do you know that? So the Screen Actors Guild is having issues as well. So there's a really good chance at the end of this month the actors go on strike as well. But let's hope not, because I like to work. But it's very possible that it happens. So right now, for the last, and the thing is, the strike started for the writers at the beginning of May, but the producers knew it was coming. So there was a huge ramp down of production, because you don't want to be in production when there's a strike, because then those shows just die. It's months pass, people change their looks, hard to get everyone back to do the same thing. So since the beginning of the year, things have really slowed down. So I have not had a lot of work. Matter of fact, I had a big job that I was supposed to do in Los Angeles in May. I flew to Los Angeles, and it got shut down because of the strike the first day I showed up to set. So, and I'm not even allowed to talk about the show. It was a big show, and I can't talk about it. But it was a big job, but everything shut down. So right now there's nothing really happening. There's just nothing happening. So there's really nothing coming out right now for me. Nothing. It's just waiting. I expect when the strike's over, there's 2 or 3 films that I was supposed to do prior to the strike this year, and they'll all happen probably in September, is my guess. And I'll have to hopefully make them all work. I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know I don't know if this is the correct title. I had to look up a little bit. The ambassador in Los Angeles for Comic-Con Portugal, right?
Yes, sure. Yes.
And what does that consist in? What do you do as?
That title is a completely made up title, but yes, that's what they gave me. It's a fine title. It doesn't matter.
It's an amazing.
To be honest, like it's a great title. I know. It's like being, you know, King of Spain, his nephew. I don't know, Lord of Sandwich. I don't know. But they the Comic-Con, most simply, you know, 10 years ago is when we started, and when they started, I had done I had directed something in Portugal for a band over there, for my friend Miguel, and he was involved with the Comic Con when it started. And when they were trying to find talent, they're like, "How are we going to get people to come to the States and come over here from the States? Nobody knows us. Why would they trust us?" And he was like, "I got this guy in LA who I'm friends with, who is an actor, and he knows people." And they called me and they asked me if I would help, because I knew how I trusted them. I knew the people involved. I knew how well they would treat talent. I knew I could be honest with them about what we could afford to do, what we could do, what we can't do. And I worked with them for a couple of years on booking talent and introduced them to a bunch of the talent managers in LA and New York. And we talked about all of these things. So I was very heavily involved. And in turn, they started asking me, like, "Can you shoot some videos? Can you do some things? Can you do this? Can you do that?" And I said, "Sure, I can make some things." And I did. And that was kind of like the start of it. You know, I was just playing, you know, and they were posting stuff. And then people started paying attention. And by the time I got to Portugal, they were like, "Okay, like you're like the face of Comic-Con," is what they said to me. They go, "So like you're like the face now." And I'm like, "What?" And they go, "Just walk on stage." I walked on stage and a bunch of people screamed because they knew. And I was like, "That's crazy." And so in turn, we just kind of kept, and they were like, "No, this is great. We want you to do some, interviews. You know, a lot of the people bringing over, you can do interviews with them, and talk about the industry in ways that people from Portugal don't really understand. And you can kind of like dive into personal stories." And that's kind of how it started. And then they made up the title. But it was just, it was great. And it's been great. It's been a real gift. Really great.
I mean, it's true. You are the face of Comic Con. When I think of Comic Con, I remember your videos with the clues and talking about the actors in the interviews. That's where I came to know you. I usually go to Comic Con, and I always follow those videos with clues and try to guess who's coming. It's really amazing.
Thanks. It was fun. Yeah, they were like, "Can you just do something?" And that's the thing. We started with the clues, and we started like a little contest and trying to figure stuff out, and hopefully for the 10th one we'll come up. We're going to revisit all of that stuff. I hope that's the goal. Is to kind of, we have a lot of time, and but to do all that again, that's the goal.
I'm really excited for the next Comic Con. And do you about acting here in Portugal? We don't really have a lot of how can I put this? It's really hard to get into cinema as a director, as an actor. We usually have novellas, soap operas, and that's the main thing here. And we don't have many acting or film schools. And my question is, do you think that it is necessary for someone to go to study acting or directing to work in cinema?
If you want to be good, you need to study. I mean, if you want to be a professional football player, you need to learn how to kick a ball. You need to, if you want to compete on a high level. The truth is like, acting and filmmaking is an art. The same way painting, sculpting is an art, or dance. And I tell everyone the same thing. It's like, if you love art and you love the art, then you are passionate about the art, and then you should study the art. But not everybody who takes a dance class thinks they're going to be backing up Beyonce. You take dance class and you just take class because you love to dance, and people paint, but no one sits there in their first painting go, "God, I wonder what I could sell this for." People don't do that. They paint because they love to paint. And then at some point, if your art is good enough, people offer to buy it. And acting, and people seem to think like, I'm going to become an actor and become rich. Like that's not how it works. You study acting, you do some plays, you act in student films, there I'm sure at the University of Lisbon and every college they have a film department, and you go and pursue acting in these films if you can, and you put your time in and you take classes and you study and you get to a point where hopefully you're very good. And then I believe that's the thing, is like people need to realize, like, you're right, the market's small. If you wanted to be if you did really want to make a career out of it, it would be hard to do in Portugal. So then you have to figure out, do you go to Brazil? Right, where they have a lot of production? Do you move to the States? Do you move to England? Um, and then you can pursue on a different level. Like, as a poker player, I played poker in Los Angeles, but if I wanted to play against the best, I had to go to Vegas, right? I had to go to Las Vegas because Las Vegas is where the best would be, If I want to do stage in the United States, I go to New York. If I want to do film, really go to LA, to establish yourself, to get started, because you really need to be in a place where the most people are doing it, in LA, you're there long enough, you meet enough people, you're like, we can make our own movie, we can do this. Someone says, oh, I can help you with this thing, or you know what, you're perfect, or hey, we need someone who speaks Portuguese, that comes up, that happens eventually, but it's just, sometimes it takes a long time.
So we have an actress, Daniela Melchior. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's a Portuguese actress, and then she got a part in the most recent Suicide Squad, and now she has been in Guardians of the Galaxy and the new Fast and Furious, and it's just in Hollywood. One of the most famous actresses in Portugal. And it's true too. If you really want to become a big actor, at least here, usually you have to go somewhere else. Our most famous actors are out there in the United States.
Yeah.
You're right.
And there's a few. I mean, there's a few that do work too.
And my final question is, if you have any tips for someone who wants to work in cinema.
Clearly, if you have a passion towards cinema, whether it be acting, directing, dive in. The great news is that we all have a camera in our pocket now. You have a camera on your phone. It costs you nothing to try to shoot stuff on your phone and edit an iMovie. It costs you nothing. It costs you nothing to put yourself on tape. Just memorize a monologue from a movie. You have the internet. You could download any script you want, and you could practice on your own. Sure, taking class is great, but anybody could do it. You just have to put your time in and practice and see how it comes out and feel like you're getting better. Find people who you think are better than you in these fields. If you want to direct, find a director, shadow them, go to set, ask them if they could if you can follow them for a few days and see what directing's like. That's what I did in the States for shows like The Office. I went to The Office and I shadowed a director for a week. For my sitcom, I stayed after work and followed the director and watched what they did. I constantly try to learn from people who I feel like are very skilled in whatever field I'm in. Even if I'm still in it, there's people I can learn from at this point. Put in the time. It takes 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. Start now. I think that's a big part of what you need to do for cinema. And also, if there's anything else you'd rather be doing, you should probably do it instead, because it's very, very hard. And there's a lot of rejection, especially as an actor. I like to believe that I'm pretty good, and I still only book like 10% of my jobs, that I audition for. I still lose out to bigger names. I lose out to people who look more right. I still and I get beat up by people who sometimes just give a better audition. You just don't know, So if you're not ready for the rejection, probably find a normal job, But if you can't find a reason to do anything else, just work as hard as you can, because if you don't, somebody else will be working that hard. So put in the time.
Thank you. Those are amazing tips, really. Do you have any questions for me?
What's your major?
I'm studying music, actually.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm playing trumpet. Recently, I got an injury. I had to stop, but I'll go back to it soon. And
Yeah,
that's what I'm studying. And on the side, I'm starting to do this of interviews, which I learned that I actually love to do. And yeah,
great, awesome. Where do you live?
I live in Portimão, right at the south of Portugal.
In the South. Nice,
Right,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
right near the beaches. It's really cool.
yeah. Near Faro is down there. Yeah, is it
Yeah,
Faro?
it's far. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Nice. I like it down there. It's very pretty. Yeah,
it is. It is. In the summer, it's full of tourists, and we usually go north at that time.
sure,
Uh,
sure. Awesome.
so I think that's it. Thank you so much for doing this. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Well, thank you for asking, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.